Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today and happy Earth Day. My name is Christian Barnes. I am the founder and lead financial coach of Do Better Financial, and welcome back to Weconomy Wednesday. The last few weeks, we have obviously been going over different portions of the stimulus package and bare bones budgeting and things like that, and today is no different. We will be covering the stimulus package, but I want to cover a couple of other things first. So the last few weeks have been a complete roller coaster, financially, emotionally, everythingly, and spending days with minimal or no contact with the outside world just by itself can be very, very stressful, right? It can be very hard. If you add on top of that concerns for the economy, for finances, for health, homeschooling kids, nonstop news, you get the picture. It's easy to get completely overwhelmed. I know I have personally experienced this, and I've also seen the lament of other people on social media experiencing this, as well as hearing this from my coworkers. So I know it's something that a lot of us deal with. That stress, fear, and anxiety can really sap our creativity. And you may be saying, why does Christian care about our creativity? Because you need it, right? When your business is deemed non-essential and now you no longer can make income the way you normally do, you need some creativity. When you're homeschooling your kids, you definitely need some creativity. I have a coworker who had the brilliant idea of having her kids take cut up pieces of okra and stamp them in paint and make cute little designs. It was absolutely adorable, but you need creativity for that. When you are reworking your budget for the 8th time, guilty, you need the full access to all of your brain power in order to make it work. And stress takes up valuable processing space, and that's the last thing we need, right? We need to be able to have our full minds connected with the tasks that are at hand. So we have to find ways to release our minds from rehashing what the worst options are, what the worst thing is that's happening, to contemplating what's possible. So we are going to get into looking at the updates to the stimulus package and the questions surrounding it. But in the spirit of what I just mentioned, alleviating stress, we're going to be starting today's video with some tips on managing stress. And not just some generic ones, but some that have worked for me personally. So first one, and why we are doing this, start your day with something besides the news. I know it's super tempting to immediately wake up in the morning, pick up your phone, and see what the idiot of the day has said, or see what, the latest news is on stay-at-homes and masks and all that stuff. But don't just start your day that way, okay? Try to do something like stretching, meditation, prayer, listening to music, something other than smacking yourself in the face with whatever the worst news of the day is, okay? Something that we started doing recently with our young adult group at church, we go to Connecting Fellowship, is daily devotion, right? So if you'd like to join us, just let me know. You can actually look on my personal page, Christian Barnes, and there is a link to the devotional that we're going to be starting on tomorrow. But the next thing you can do, besides just not starting your day with, crappy news, is to move your body, right? Doing things like walking, yoga, online workout, etc. It just gets your blood flowing, and having that extra blood flow can really allow you to think more clearly, to have an in general better day. I know I've gotten out of the habit of it, but a couple of weeks ago I was doing a really good job of working out first thing in the morning, and those days were pretty good. Obviously, I am a workout person, like that's my typical modus operandi. So doing it is a return to some semblance of normalcy for me, but it allowed me to get back into the groove of working out, and also to do it before everything else get crowded out of my day. I really want to get back to that. Do something relaxing. For me, this is things like painting my nails. As you can see, they're rainbow colored because I thought it was fun. I got new nail polishes. This was one of my last treats to myself, and I wanted to try them all, so I did. Right? So painting my nails, coloring, playing with Legos. For those of you who are my friends on Facebook, you already know this. The nails and the Legos don't always get along well together, but it is what it is. whatever that is for you. Maybe you're the person who likes to give yourself a spa day, and you want to put on the face mask and relax in the tub. Maybe you want to read. Maybe you want to maybe you're like my husband and you just want to take a drive. As long as you're not going to go talk in anybody's face, I think you're still allowed to take drives, right? So do something that is relaxing to you. The next one is to make connections. That's with family, with friends. You can call, you can video chat. As I've mentioned in the past, I like to do porch drop-ins when possible, when the weather is not like, hating on me. And porch drop-ins means you stand distanced on the porch, and based on the regulations now, you would need to wear a mask to do that in Harris County, but nevertheless, at least you get to see some, humans, especially if you live alone. Seeing my family on Sundays, we have like a Sunday video chat thing that we do, is one of the highlights of my week, so definitely try to do something like that. Unplug periodically. So obviously I started with don't start your day with bad news. Sometimes you need a few hours without bad news. You need a day or a week, maybe a month without bad news, or without just the barrage of news, right? Where you can take in news as you would like instead of being constantly, smacked around by it. So take whatever you need. I find myself overwhelmed sometimes just by all the sadness and sometimes furious at all the stupidity that I run into scrolling every day. And when I find myself in that place, I turn off Facebook. I get off of Instagram. I may go watch Doug on Disney Plus, or I may watch Jeopardy with my husband, or I may get out my Legos, right? So unplug periodically. The next one is express some gratitude and acknowledge joy. So I know a lot of people keep gratitude journals. I've started keeping a joy journal. I actually started this at the beginning of the year when my husband and I were displaced for our home for a month. I have not told you guys that story, but it's coming. And it just allows me to search for or even instigate something that brings me joy every day. So there are days that obviously the joyous thing I did was play with Legos. Clearly there's a pattern. Some days it's visiting with family, typically Sundays, and some days it's a grilled cheese. My husband made me a great one a couple of days ago, right? It doesn't really matter what it is. You're just looking for something that gives you joy so that you can rehearse those things and focus your minds on the good and not let it get lost in the fray of doom and gloom, right? So the idea is just to be able to remind yourself that not everything is falling apart, not everything is horrible. There is something good happening today, and anytime I'm struggling, I can literally go back and go, oh man, that was a good day. I had fun doing that. That was wonderful. That made me laugh, stuff like that. Next one, give yourself grace. Not every day is going to be super productive. I see all these, if you don't get stuff done now, you never lack time, you lack motivation. And it's like, well, maybe you didn't always lack motivation, but now that you're struggling with all the things I listed before, homeschooling, anxiety, stress, health issues, finances, you now no longer have motivation, right? So give yourself a break. Some days you're going to have the energy to conquer the world, and some days you're only going to have the energy to make sure the kids eat. Maybe the kitchen's not going to get clean today. Maybe the towels won't get washed. That is okay. We all deal with trauma, loss, and stress differently. So the truth is, beating yourself up about it doesn't help. I'm a witness. Beating myself up for the days when I just don't have the energy to do anything at all except honestly use the bathroom and take a nap, it doesn't make me feel any more energized. It doesn't work that way, okay? So give yourself permission to take a break when you need it and lean into those productive days when you have them. Last but not least is to ask for help, whether that's from friends and family. Sometimes, there are definitely times where I can't get out of the bed for various reasons, and my husband will make me a grilled cheese, which is wonderful. If you need professional help, whether that's a therapist, I see one of those too, or if you need to, if you don't have any of those things available to you, or there's some of the things causing you problems, there are a bunch of different hotlines available to you. Linked in the description below is a myriad of different hotlines that you can call that are available to you, whether that's for different types of anxiety, whether you're dealing with an abuse situation or anything like that. So use those resources that are available to you and tap into those opportunities, relieve yourself of stress. So like I said, why is the financial coach talking about how to manage your stress and talking about exercise? Because in reality, when you're dealing with a stressful situation or a unique, ever-changing situation, stress clouds your ability to use your creativity to solve these situations or to deal with them or to handle them or to come up with, an option C. Frequently people, they create this, what I like to call what is called a false dichotomy, that there are only two choices. There is, more often than not, always an option C. And sometimes there's an option D, E, F, and G. But if you're afraid, if you're angry, if you're stressed out, you can't figure out what they are. So that's why I'm talking about this. Take some time to implement those things in your life so that you can function better. Okay? So that's my little health minute, as my dad would say. Shout out to my dad at South Rock. But we're going to get into those stimulus package updates. So the Senate has officially passed stimulus package 3.1. It's not stimulus package 4. We talked a little bit about that last week. This is not that. This is 3.1, and it's in addition to stimulus package 3, which is the CARES Act, which is the one that most people are familiar with. This one, that first one was for $2.2 trillion, and this one is for $480 billion. I think it's 484 to be specific, but anyway, the reason that most people care about this is because there's $310 billion in it for the Paycheck Protection Plan, or the PPP. I want to make sure I mention before I get too far into this that this has not become law yet. The House has not passed it. They are expected to pass it tomorrow sometime, and then hopefully the president will be signing it into law shortly thereafter, at which point all of these things will go into effect. But I'm giving you the information because you probably need to take care of some of this stuff now. So if you are in line for PPP and you've already applied and they cut it off before your loan got processed, you should be fine as long as you have the right information and as long as you're not at the end of the line. And we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to do if you have not applied yet. So it's $310 billion for the PPP program. $60 billion of that has been earmarked specifically, I'm going to read this one because I don't want to get it wrong, for community financial institutions, small insured depository institutions, and credit unions with assets less than $10 billion. So you're talking about small, rural/urban types of banks. So that $60 billion is supposed to be, a small amount that has been set aside to make sure that people, like, I'm trying to think of the name of that company, Ruth Chris, can't get their hands on through some random legal loopholes that were left by the original $2.2 trillion bill, with the $450 billion that was allocated for this program, right? So $310 billion for PPP, $60 billion has been allocated to the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Loan Disaster Program. $10 billion of that 60 is for the forgivable grants. So they had paused the forgivable grants because that portion of the EIDL funding had expired. So that should be renewing again. If you're already in process, they should begin processing those soon after this has passed. There are some other things in there as far as like SBA funding for overhead. I think that's like $2 billion. Some people think that's too much. I think we all have to remember that there are humans processing these loans and they all still have to be paid. And I believe they processed 60,000 loans last year, the SBA. They processed 70,000 loans in the last 2 weeks. You gotta pay for that, okay? That money does not just appear, all right? So before you get too up in arms, granted, they may be spending some of it on, the infamous golden toilets. That wasn't a real thing, but a lot of people think it is. Nevertheless, it may not all be allocated properly, but definitely some of that is going to paying the people who have been able to process these loans this quickly, okay? $75 billion is going to hospitals and healthcare providers. $25 billion is going to COVID testing. $11 billion of that 25 goes to the states to help them develop, purchase, administer, process, and analyze COVID test results. So that would go specifically like to the state of Texas or Louisiana or New York or whatever to help them in procuring their tests, administering their tests, and getting the results back on their tests. The rest of that money is going to go to labs for treatment, for research and development on treatment and vaccines. So the other 14 billion of the 25 for testing is going to labs. So that's the bill in and of itself. Now let's get back to the PPP part of it. And EIDL, can you start applying again, and where should you apply? So you can apply again. For some lenders, they have already opened it up. They were still accepting applications in spite of the fact that the program had run out of money. So if you are able to find a place that's accepting applications right now, they would basically put you in line so that once the House passes the bill and it gets signed into law, you would be in line already. Just make sure that all of your paperwork is filled out completely and accurately before you put it in. The last thing you want is for them to get you to the front of the line, be ready to process your loan, only to find out that you're missing something. That said, please refer back to my original video and the one right before this one, where I remind people that the legislation around the PPP program in particular is very, very fuzzy. If you're gonna do this, read all the fine print, do as much research as you can, and be prepared to owe something in case this doesn't work out quite like they intended, because as we already saw, they didn't intend for places like Ruth Chris and Shake Shack to get these loans, but they didn't take/have the time necessary to write the legislation in a way that prevented them from getting it. So that alone lets me know that this is not foolproof. Therefore, read the fine print, okay? Side note, Shake Shack does intend to return the money that they were afforded under the PPP program. I have not heard anything about Ruth's Chris, but I know some larger companies are doing that, not all of them. Big ups to Shake Shack for being honorable. I'm pretty sure that is going to come back to bite some businesses in the butt in the not so distant future. So, that said, where should you apply? This one's going to be fun. So large banks like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, they are currently being sued because there is concerns that based on the loan amounts and the way that they were processed through the SBA, the loan amounts that went through at the tail end were all small, and the ones that went through at the very beginning were very large. So there is a concern that these large banks have actually reshuffled the line, so to speak, to get funding and put the companies that would give them the largest amount of fees in return at the front. So they front-loaded getting the most money out of the least amount of work for their company, which makes sense from a fiscal standpoint, right? Because Merca. However, it was not the intent of the bill. And so they're being sued for that. They are also, as I discussed a couple of weeks ago, having the most trouble actually distributing, or they're the least effective in distributing the loan money to the businesses themselves. So there is a concern there that even though a lot of those loans that went to the SBA have been approved, from what I've seen, the highest estimates of how many people have actually gotten money even after approval is less than 10%. Okay, so that's not encouraging for them. Small institutions have been dispersing their funds, more funds in general. So you're talking about those community banks, credit unions, things like that. So if you have access to a bank like that, a credit union, a smaller bank, if you live in a smaller town, your bank is probably small, as long as you don't use one of the the bigger national banks I just mentioned. They seem to be doing a lot better job of processing these. They also just tend to have fewer applicants. So I listened to a guy who was giving an update on some of his clients, and he had a client who was at Chase, and Chase sent them a letter saying that they were behind 100,000 more people. Right, completely mind-boggling. At Chase, not at the SBA. They're behind 100,000 people at Chase. Other businesses, people are businesses. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. So if you can find a smaller community-type bank, you're going to have better luck with that. FinTech companies are another option for those who don't have, who are either, struggling to get near the front of the line with Chase or a Wells Fargo or a B of A, Bank of America. So if you're looking at something like a PayPal or Square, or even Intuit QuickBooks, they are also offering the ability to apply for these loans through their platforms. And they're very good at running a lot of small loans because they don't have typically as much overhead. So they're not going to skip over the small loans, and they also have the bandwidth to process them quickly enough that they're still profitable, right? So if you're going to apply for one of these loans, number one, read the fine print. Number two, if you haven't already applied, you probably want to try a small local bank or a fintech company, as the larger banks have crazy lines right now. Yeah, so if you have any more questions on that, just leave them down in the comments below, or you can shoot me a message. Next, and the one that I'm sure the most people are asking questions about, is what is the deal with Get My Payment? It's stressful, okay? Because government, right? In general, their systems are old. Like the IRS, the normal tax processing systems, and a lot of their other systems are going to be older, right? But the system Get My Payment is relatively new. If you're not familiar with it, it was launched last Wednesday to be exact, where people could log in and either provide their direct deposit information or see when their payment was scheduled to come and what type of payment they were going to get, right? Whether it was direct deposit or a check. So that's what it's supposed to do. But because it's brand new, of course it has glitches, but it also doesn't play nicely with some of the other IRS systems that are old as dirt, okay? So they have stopped. I'm sorry. So if you have any questions, if you haven't seen this, go to irs.gov, and I believe it's called Get My Payment Portal or something like that, right? You can go in there, check it out, put in the information, see what it says to you. One of the reasons that people are having a hard time right now is they're thinking, hey, I submitted my return, but I had to mail it. I have a client who had to do this. Why is my information saying that, I can't be verified? They have stopped processing paper returns. So if you were eligible in 2018, you're going to need to use that information on Get My Payment. You're not going to want to use your 2019 information, even if you filed it, because they have not processed it if you sent in a paper return. If you did not file in 2018 or you weren't eligible, you're going to have to wait until they start processing 2019 paper returns again before you can use the Get My Payment tool. That doesn't necessarily mean you're not getting a stimulus payment at all, but what it does mean is that you're not going to be able to use that online portal if you're trying to utilize your 2019 tax information. So if you owe taxes in 2018 or in 2019, even if you paid electronically, you still have to give them your direct deposit info via this Get My Payment tool. So you might be saying, I paid you from my account, or I pay you regularly from my account. I have a payment plan. Why can't you just send the money there? Their systems do not talk to each other, and they do not work that way. For whatever reason, they cannot just pay you to the same place where they draft you from. You need to go into the direct deposit, into the Get My Payment tool, and input your direct deposit information in order to receive your stimulus payment via direct deposit. Obviously, otherwise you would be getting a check. To enter that information, to update this information, you have to enter everything that they ask you exactly. Your address is the biggest one that I've seen issues with. If you put in Drive, DRIVE, on your return, it has to be DRIVE. You can't put in DR or DR period. I had DR period on mine, and so I had to put in DR period in order to get the thing to update. You're also going to be asked if you don't do that correctly, you're going to be locked out for 24 hours. All of the IRS systems are like that. Their regular payment systems are like that as well. So if you get locked out, just know you're going to have to wait 24 hours before you can try again. If you, they update once a day, just once, and it's overnight. So if you're a person who's trying to check every day, I've been checking every day out of curiosity more than anything. I put in our tax information on our direct debit information on the first day. Every time I go in there, it gives me the same message. It says you are eligible for a payment. It has not been scheduled yet. It will be direct deposited, and it gives me the last 4 digits of my account. That's the thing. The same thing it's said every day that I have checked. But like I said, they only update once a day. So you can go check once a day, whatever time of day you want. But from what I've seen, they update overnight. You may actually end up getting a check before they ever update that portal. It's not foolproof. I definitely saw somebody who asked me questions last week, got their payment yesterday, and that website portal never updated for them. Their payment just showed up in their bank account, right? So if you've been trying to log on and you're getting some weird statuses, what did they mean? So if you get a payment status, it's either going to say that the payment's been processed, and it's going to tell you the date and the method, whether it's direct deposit or mail, and when it'll be available, right? It may say, like mine, that you're eligible. This is where your payment's going to go, but we haven't scheduled it yet. Those are the two payment statuses that you'll see. You may need more information, which is what I got the first time I logged in, because they need you to update your direct deposit information. You're going to have to verify your identity to do so. So you're going to need the last tax return that they have on file. Here's where it becomes important if you filed via paper. If you filed 2019 via paper, they have not uploaded that. You're going to need to use your 2018 data, which may also explain why you haven't been able to get into the system. If you were using your 2019 address that you filed with, you need to go use your 2018 address and then all the other information from that return in order to update your direct deposit. Hope that makes sense. If you neither owed money nor got a refund in the last return that you filed, you can either try leaving the number blank, they're going to ask you for that, or you can try putting in a 0. But you still may end up with the payment status not available, which is the next status. This seems to be a system glitch that they haven't worked out just yet, okay? Unfortunate, but like I said, if they do have your direct deposit information, you're going to get your money. It's just a matter of you won't be able to know when. So, if you get payment status not available, there are a few reasons why that could be. Your 2019, like I said, return has been filed and is still processing, and you're using that information. If that's the case, try 2018. The application does not have your data yet. Like I said, they're not the same system. It seems like they're either doing some kind of import-export situation or something like that. So whatever, if it's not working for 2019 and you already filed, try 2018. If neither of those works, you're just going to have to wait. I'm sorry. Nonfilers, if you use the Nonfilers tool, again, they are processing all that information. Even these systems aren't linked, so you may have to wait until they get the non-filer information into the Get My Payment system. Why they're separate, I don't know, but you may have to wait until they get it in there before you're able to use Get My Payment to see when your payment is coming. If you receive Social Security benefits, meaning that you paid into the system, railroad benefits, Social Security assistance, which is the mean tested one, or VA benefits, the system that processes these payments is separate. So even if you're eligible, it's not going to show your stuff there because all of those payments are processed through a different system. The good news on that front is, as you may have seen a post that I made yesterday saying that people who had Social Security and wanted to claim dependents needed to update those on the non-filers tool by today at noon. So that has already passed. That's because they're getting ready to send out economic impact payments to people who get direct deposits of Social Security, railroad benefits, and VA. So that's the good news. Those should go out to y'all this coming week. But if you claim Social Security and you have dependents and you did not put them in the non-filers tool, you will have to wait until the 2020 taxes get filed in 2021 to get money for the dependents only. So you'll get your $1,200 for you personally, but if you did not add your dependents in the non-filers tool by noon today, which is already passed again, you won't be able to get the $500 for your dependents 17 and under until next year, okay? The other reason you might get payment status not available is because you're flat out not eligible. If that's incorrect and you think you qualify based on your 2019 taxes and all they've processed as your 2018, it's going to show you're not eligible, right? You have to wait for that process to finish up. If you, this is the other one, and this has a little star. This is not listed on the IRS website, but I've heard this from a couple of different people. If you used a tax preparer like TurboTax or H&R Block, you may also get this result because of the way they could be sending your money. So if you used something like an advance, if you got a tax advance, the way that these tax preparers, excuse me, my eyes itching. I'm trying not to touch my face, but it's not working. So if you use their tax tool and you get an advance, or you told them to take your fee out of your return, they will sometimes set up what's like a temporary bank account where they can withdraw the funds that you owe them, and then they would send you the rest. So if that is the case, you may be waiting, and you might even see on the website that it says that you've been paid already, but you don't have your money, and it could be because it went to one of those websites. If you used a prepaid debit card, a lot of those companies offer prepaid debit cards for you to have your refund deposited to. That could be another reason why there is a holdup. It could say it's been deposited, but it could be on, one of those prepaid debit cards. It may not even be in a physical card. It's just something that they gave you, that the tax preparer gave you. You should still get the funds, but again, it's going to take the H&R Blocks and the TurboTaxes a little while to work through all of that, right? And last but not least, if you utilized something that was not quite above board to file your taxes, if you had somebody else claim your kids or something like that, obviously this is going to be a very difficult thing for you to sort out, and honestly you may not see this money unless the IRS and the government and some other entities get involved and help you track these people down so that you can get the money that is technically yours, but that could bring up some other issues for you. So, if you filed with somebody who was unsavory, definitely something to think about as to why you may not have your check yet. Last but not least, if you're expecting a paper check, the first ones are going to people who have an adjusted gross income of less than $10,000 or less. Those should be going out this week. The last paper checks will go for people up to between 190 and 198,000 married filing jointly. Those will go out the week of September 4th. So there's a link below with the full schedule of when the paper checks will go out. If you're still getting one, if you have the ability to use the Get My Payment tool to update your direct deposit information, and go ahead and do that because it'll just be faster. But that is our update for today, right? So I want to thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, this is another Weeconomy Wednesday. If you have any questions, if you're concerned about dealing with your finances in this time, you can go ahead and schedule a free discovery session with me. It'll give you an opportunity to kind of chat with me about some of the things that you're facing, and I can point you in the right direction. Or if you're somebody who is not struggling but wants to make sure it stays that way, I can definitely help you with that as well. You can go to dobetterfinancial.com/free to sign up for that. You can also take this opportunity to look at some of the different tools that are available on the website as far as budgeting, and just some tools to get you through this time. There are links below for all the things that I've discussed. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at christian@dobetterfinancial.com. You can message me here on Facebook, or there's always a third one that I forget. You can leave a comment in this video. There it is. So again, my name is Christian Barnes with Do Better Financial. Thank you so much for joining me for Weeconomy Wednesday. I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.